From VentureX Studios, it's JP, Kathy, and the crew.
All right. I can't hear myself on the mic. Am I on? Okay. Okay. Usually I've got my headset on. So, and my ears are also clogged up because of allergies. Shocking, I know. Everybody's like, oh, yeah, we know Kathy. She's over here blowing her nose before the show, using asthma inhaler, all that kind of good stuff. Well, hey, we are really, really excited that you have chosen to spend this morning with us. We're doing a special tribute to 9/11, of course. Tomorrow it will have been 20 years. And I see you're nodding your head. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's one of those things for people our age. You remember exactly where you were, the way, people a little bit older than us remember where they were on, say, the day that Kennedy was shot, or
Pearl Harbor,
or there are those dates in history that everybody remembers exactly where they were when they found out.
Yeah, and we'll be sharing that. We've got Lathan Watts from First Liberty. We've got Brad Namdar, who is a congressional candidate now, officially, I can say that. And then we will have Fred Nort coming in studio, who is a former police officer from the New York area who was there, boots on the ground. So, again, we're going to talk about a few other things besides 9/11, but really want to focus on the importance and the significance of this date in history. And this is one of those things, everybody uses the hashtag nowadays, never forget. And we'll talk about that. I know there's something that I've done with my kids ever since they were little that is to help them remember, because my daughter wasn't even 2 yet. My son wasn't even born yet. So how do you make sure that a generation that was not alive or was very young, how do you make sure that they remember and they know about the importance of 9/11 and the significance of innocent Americans just going to work, going about their normal day, and being attacked? These aren't people who signed up for the military or, as first responders. These are innocent people going to work. They get attacked and killed on American soil. Very significant, very significant. And so we'll be talking about that. I do want to give, we've got a bit of sad news for the crew. One of the members of the crew has passed away. Y'all know back in the day I was a special education teacher, taught at Plano East Senior High, and just loved my time there. And during my time as a teacher at Plano East, I was able to meet some amazing students and work with some amazing parents. And some of those folks, quite a few of them, I've kept in touch with over the years. And one of those families is Ryan Massey's family. He was a great kid at Plano East Senior High, was very involved in agriculture, had an award-winning heifer that we even got to go see at the fair. Even past his time as one of my students, he mowed my lawn. He had his own lawn mowing service and his own firewood business. And we just stayed good friends, stayed friends with his mom, Rhonda Massey, who became a member of the crew when JP and I got on the radio together. And Joe Chandler, his brother as well, is a member of the crew, and just love this family. And unfortunately, Rhonda passed of COVID on Monday. So, just please keep their family in your prayers. She was an incredible woman. She is missed tremendously by her family and friends. And we just ask that the crew please join us in prayer and pray for Rhonda Massey's family. She was an incredible woman, and may she rest in peace. She was also a woman who definitely believed in the Lord. So I know she's celebrating in all her glory right now. So that's the good news part of it. We're just left here to miss her. Let's go ahead. Whew, okay. That's always tough. That's always tough. So let's go ahead, and Lathan, we're going to talk with you first about so Lathan is very flexible on our show. Lathan has multiple personalities when he's on our show. Sometimes Lathan's just a member of the crew hanging out with us, radio personality, podcast personality, but sometimes he's putting on his First Liberty hat. And we're going to ask you first to put on your First Liberty hat.
Got it.
And let's talk about let's go ahead and talk about vaccines in light of what the president announced yesterday, which I don't know about y'all, but my phone blew up just blew
Yeah,
up.
absolutely.
I'm sure all of y'all's did. I've even got somebody who I know who the day before called me in a panic saying, I just found out that I will lose my job by November 15th if I'm not fully vaccinated. And this company is headquartered out of another country, and the employees work from home. And this individual worked from home for almost a decade, even before the pandemic.
Right.
So I'm sitting here thinking, why do you need? And this individual has had COVID and feels like a shot is not necessary.
Right.
So I know you guys at First Liberty are getting blown up because people are looking for religious exemptions
Right.
for the vaccine. So tell us, where do people go? How do they find this out?
Yeah, so we were already, I would say, inundated with calls even prior to the president's announcement yesterday. And yeah, there are a lot of people who have religious beliefs that they want to adhere to that prevent them from, or they have concerns about this vaccine. And we're getting so many calls that the best way we can handle it is we created basically like a toolkit for people that they can read through, and there's some templates in there based on, do you work in the private sector, do you work for the government, or are you in the military? And it kind of explains how to request a religious exemption, an exemption from a vaccine mandate based on your religious beliefs.
Right.
And you can use that to craft, your own request that's specific to your situation. And that's free. It's on our website. Just go to firstliberty.org. I think there's like a red banner at the top. You can find it there. And we would encourage people to do that first.
Okay.
Because we've got limited staff and time and resources, and we're running out of people to handle the calls.
I mean, it's at some point you don't have enough hours in the day and enough people
Right.
on the phone to be able to return calls. And again, y'all took the initiative on this even before the president's announcement yesterday. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, people not knowing that JP, Kathy, and the crew has a connection with you, or that you and I are longtime friends from back in the young Republican days when we qualified. Oh, Lathan still qualifies. At least his wife does.
Nope.
She looks like she does. God bless her. But, they were like, oh, Kathy, have you heard of First Liberty? And everybody's sending me y'all's link. And I'm like, as a matter of fact, yes, great organization, great people. But y'all were hit up hard beforehand.
I think the last number I heard prior to the announcement yesterday was like in the last 2 weeks we had somewhere in the neighborhood of over 1,000 phone calls from people asking for help, which is why we put that little kit together and put it on the website so we can refer people to that. And it's like, please read this, use this to request your exemption. If your exemption's denied, then come back to the website and click that Get Legal Help tab.
Gotcha.
And, we're not trying to be bureaucratic. It's just there's so many requests. That little form helps us track all of the requests so that we don't miss something. So if you do that and then fill out that tab, then we can get back in touch with you if we think there's, something that we can, if we need to, sign you up as a client and take on a matter. The fact is there's just way too many of these for us to do them all.
Right.
So we have to find, the right fact pattern and the right client that we feel like could make the best case that could then protect everybody if we win that case. So I would just encourage everybody to go to the website, firstliberty.org, read the material there about requesting an exemption. Do that. If your request is denied, come back to the website, fill out that Get Legal Help tab, and then we'll get in contact with you.
Right. And in the meantime, and you and I spoke about this yesterday, there are already, going to be lawsuits. Again, this is not what the president discussed yesterday. I can't even imagine the lawsuits that are coming from this.
The first thing that I thought of when I was listening to what he said, and I only caught bits and pieces of it, I didn't get all of it. I've watched some of it, but he was talking about going through OSHA to require this of employers. Well, OSHA's a federal agency.
Right.
And if you're going to make a rule, you typically have to go through notice and a public comment period.
Yes.
In order for that rule to withstand.
That's what you
legal
have to
challenges.
do. That's what you have to do at local levels of
right.
government.
I mean, it's the Administrative Procedures Act. So I would be shocked if someone doesn't challenge this in court and try to get go to a federal district court and try to get a nationwide injunction against it for violating the APA.
Yeah.
And that's just on the employer part of it. And the rest of it, there'll be other issues I expect. But it will be litigated. There's no doubt.
There's no doubt. So again, follow the steps on firstliberty.org. We'll put the link in here on our show page. Anyway, this isn't over, and people, even government employees who this is being mandated. And then you even have Los Angeles ISD, the Los Angeles School Board. They're not. What are they? They're not ISDs. They're I forget. I'm blanking out on what they're called. But they passed a vaccine mandate. So again, it's not over. Just know that you've got organizations like First Liberty. They'll help you. Let's go ahead, and before we switch over to Brad and Fred, let's talk about the airlines. So Alaskan Airlines, it's interesting. Like within 12 hours, Lathan sends me one link. He's like, "Oh, I can talk about this," and I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then it's like, "Nope, here's something else." Right. So never a shortage of cases, unfortunately.
No, we are, as they say in my neck of the woods, busier than a one-legged man in a kick fight.
Yes.
So in addition to, all the stuff related to the pandemic that we've done over the last 2 years, and then now the stuff with the vaccine mandates, I wouldn't say that there's a typical kind of case at First Liberty, but all the other kinds of cases, they never stopped either.
Right.
All those other issues are still going on. And so yesterday we announced we are representing 2 flight attendants who worked for Alaskan Airlines.
Right.
And Alaskan Airlines posted a message on their kind of internal intranet, their company kind of message board, that only the employees read. And it was a message that all about the Equality Act and how Alaskan Airlines was all on board and very supportive. And in this post, they encouraged employees to discuss it, to comment about it.
And that was, we're talking literal verbiage, encouraging conversations amongst the employees.
Right.
So let's clear that up.
Right.
They
asked for feedback.
Okay.
And these 2 flight attendants, which we now represent, each posted comments about the Equality Act, raising questions about it. Lacey Smith, her question was, do you as a company believe you can legislate morality? That's what she asked.
That's a comment. That's feedback, right?
And both of these flight attendants, the other comment was, a little edgier, but they asked for feedback and they got it. And they fired both of these flight attendants based on the comments that they made on this post,
and it wasn't,
this internal post.
Again, it was, that's a question I want to know from an employer. And it's a question that we're in and one of the things the 4 of us will talk about today is we're in tumultuous times. We're in very trying times in our country, the most trying times I've ever seen in my lifetime. And so now there are questions that maybe a few years ago when you were hired by an employee, you never thought to ask questions about their political stance. Will my political stance ever be impacted? Things of that nature. And so now you've got
these 2
people who you've got to ask the question after the fact.
Right. And these 2 employees, the comments they made, in their criticism, implied or overt of the Equality Act were based on their religious beliefs on these issues.
Right.
Religious beliefs that are pretty common across a lot of different religions.
Right.
People can disagree over the Equality Act, and I actually think Alaskan Airlines, if a company is going to get out of the commercial space that they work in,
right,
and wade into a political issue, I actually think what they did is probably a good idea to tell your employees, hey, we're going to do this, and seek some feedback.
Right.
But what you can't do is then fire the people who give you the feedback that you don't want.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And particularly when that is based on their religious belief. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act 1964 prohibits employment discrimination on the basis of religion. And what they did is a blatant violation of that. So we've now filed 2 separate complaints, individually on behalf of these flight attendants with the federal EEOC and charges of employment discrimination. And we'll wait now to see how the EEOC deals with it. And once they do, depending on what they decide to do, then we'll work with our clients, to get this resolved in a way that they're comfortable with.
Well, and we appreciate you bringing this to us. You also have an article. And we'll have you post that in the comment section since we had one story take priority over the other. But if you want to, how do people get in touch with you, Lathan, through First Liberty? How do people get in touch with you?
FirstLiberty.org. For me specifically, go to the tab that says Our Team, Legal Team. There's my picture. Click
Perfect.
on me.
Perfect. You'll be tomorrow with Christians Engaged with Bunny Pounds.
I will.
Unfortunately, I've got another event, or else I'd be there. So talk about that event a little bit. Is it still open for people to attend?
That I would have to direct
Refer
to Bunny.
Bunny. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm just kind of one of the talking heads.
Gotcha.
This is Bunny's ministry that we represented when her C3 status was denied. So this is her doing what she does.
Gotcha.
She's at this church teaching people about the political process, and I'll be there just speaking on religious liberty and how it's enshrined in the Constitution. How what we do protects people's right to live according to what they believe for people of all faiths, and so I'm just kind of one of the I guess subject matter experts.
There you go.
If I'm being generous to myself,
he's not going to brag on himself. He is. So, so anyways, if you want to have Lathan on your show, he's a regular on a number of shows besides ours. Point of View, tons of shows, and also a speaker regularly at events. So we really appreciate you. Now, so that was your First Liberty hat. So when we now, next time you see Lathan on camera, he will just be Lathan Watts, member of the crew and friend of mine and JP's. So let's go ahead over to the other side of the table, and let's. I want to make sure those of you who do not know Brad Namdar and Fred Nort. Good morning, gentlemen. It's so good to have you guys here. Brad Namdar is he's been a guest co-host with me before. Very involved politically, mentor to a ton of young kids, even though he is young himself compared to all of us. But he is now a congressional candidate, and we'll have you on to talk with you about that at another time. But before I introduce Brad, let's talk, because this is going to lead into 9/11 and how when you open the floodgates of America, and when you're not there ready to make sure that danger does not come in, harm does not come into our American citizens, we're in trouble, and you've got to be proactive. It can't be after the fact that you're like, oh, wait, everybody who's here who is selling drugs, doing sex trafficking, wants to kill us, hates freedom, hates religious freedom. Everybody, y'all get out. It never works that way. You've got to be proactive. And you recently, and I was stunned by some of your videos, you recently, because you're running for Congress, and because especially if you win, win. Oh yes, Brad's he's a positive person. I love this. When you win, Fred, who's a life coach, who's sitting next to you, y'all will get along real well. When you win, this is going to be a huge issue as a congressman from Texas. So if you can just fill us in on a little bit, we're going to have Brad on where he's going to have an entire segment to talk about what's going on in the border, and we can maybe show some of the stuff. Okay, we can show some of the stuff that you videotaped. So talk about the chaos that is the Texas border right now, Brad.
So on the onset, I was in 6th grade when 9/11 happened, and I think about that, and at my age and my
right?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
at my age,
Brad's our token young person. Everybody here today.
I'm the token millennial.
Yes.
So, but I remember I was at Frankford Middle School in Plano, and it was going into Texas history. Then we had English, and then we had math, and they played it on the projector screens, and we watched it as the second plane hit, and you didn't fathom fully at that age really what was going on, but you also then saw just how bad it was afterwards. So as we got older, especially me and some of my friends and peers, we realized, okay, this was not something that was an accident, because again, you're in 6th grade, you're 12,
right.
And so now that I've gotten older and I've seen what's going on, yes, national security is a huge issue. We've had 17 cyber attacks on our country since then.
Since 9/11?
No, since just the Biden administration, yes. I mean...
so I want you to say that again.
Since the Biden administration has come in
right
to
into play.
office.
Yeah.
We've had 17 cyber attacks. I mean, I couldn't get briskets at Katy Trail Ice House because they hit a meat manufacturer and distributor. We've had, countless, just mess ups. So you look at what happened in Afghanistan and how we, they say, how we pulled out and, the deals that we had with the Taliban. And again, I've had friends who served, as I'm sure everyone at this table's had. We've all known people who served, and I just want to make sure that they all know that, number one, we thank them for their service.
Amen.
And we thank
God
our
bless
allies
them.
for their
Yes.
service.
Yes.
I mean, we'll thank everyone for their service and those who went there. And at the end of the day, what's sad to me is that tragedy brought our nation together from all different backgrounds. It didn't matter what religion you were, what race you were. You're an American, and we knew that this was a hit on our homeland.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, especially being the youngest member of our tribute today, because that was one of the most powerful. And I'm sure as we all tell our stories about where we were, like Brad, is that hit home. And
with everybody.
We don't have that right now.
Well, what I think we're going to have is that, well, hopefully, one thing is that what you brought up the border. Well, when I went to the border, I got married recently,
Yes.
right?
And yes, congratulations and blessings. We love your wife, Pia, and thank you so much for inviting me to your wedding. It was absolutely beautiful. Just a beautiful wedding. Beautiful couple.
Welcome to the male club of misery.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you
Hey,
this.
he's a
I married
newlywed.
up.
Come on.
I married up.
He did. He married up. He married very
so
well.
I did pretty well. I married up, but then we went on our honeymoon and we got back, and I said, okay, I'm going to the border, and she goes,
That's not a second honeymoon.
no, well, she was staying. I went by myself, and
Yeah.
a good friend of mine, Samuel, he gave me this, I think it's a 3-plate. He called it a bulletproof vest and everything. And I have some friends in the RGV that I told them I'm coming to the border. Now, for some reason, people from North Texas just don't go visit the border. Well, my member of Congress, currently that's holding the seat, he hasn't been to the border, so I might send him an invoice because it is his job for him to go check it out. But, so we drove down there. It took 8 hours. And what I saw was as closer as we were getting there, they sold fake license plates at some gas stations. I mean, they sold, it's a culture. This was, we're going to Hidalgo County. Other side of there is Reynosa. So we got there. Average income, I believe, was like around 23,000. Number one employer was the municipality. But they had some fields that were just, stampeded upon, the farmers. I've talked with our, ag commissioner about this at Miller as well. And I think that it's important that if you want to be in Congress, you have to learn, earn your spurs. Go down there and go. And I walked into Mexico with no passport. I came to back in the U.S. with no passport.
And, okay, so literally,
It's on the
this
video.
was just a few weeks ago, and this is on video, and we'll show this when you're back on the show. No passport.
Through
back and
immigration,
forth,
yeah.
Back and forth.
Yep. And I just wanted to show, I want to learn,
You wanted to see what was required.
What was going on.
Right.
And then I went on a ranch that was right on the border of the Rio Grande, and I could throw a football and hit the other side of Mexico. It was literally, it had to have been 35 yards.
Yeah.
No border patrol. No, but there's actually a dock that was on there, where you can go fishing and hang out. There's a guy in a big tube fishing and stuff like that. So I realized, okay. So there's a moment in actually the video where I got really upset because I realized, one, it's not what everyone thinks. Some areas aren't manned. There's a wall, and then there's supposed to be a second wall or barrier. And there's a gray area. And that gray area is where you have crime, narcotics, fentanyl, human trafficking.
And fentanyl just recently killed a couple of Hollywood actors, which fentanyl, it's one of those things, it's what they're lacing, I say the kids, younger people. And actually, there was an actor in their 50s who just recently passed. And even if a little bit of fentanyl is cut into your drugs.
Oh, you're dead.
It's a nasty, nasty drug.
Yeah.
And that's what's coming across the border right now. And
the problem is, and hopefully if I get elected to Congress, or I plan when I do, is that I'm going to have a very, very, I have legislation already written, ready to go. And on my website, we're going to launch soon. That we have to make a barrier on our border, and we have to be smarter. Because it's not just, let me just tell you this, the United States of America, we are the moral authority on the earth. We are the superpower, and we need to maintain that. I don't like, and I don't think it's Texas values, in my opinion, or North Texas, or red, or blue, or white, to think that we are a country that allows for the moral, standards to be secondary. Oh, we're going to leave people, in Afghanistan. We're going to leave people left behind. We're going to leave our allies. No, that's not who we are. And if that's who you believe we are.
No, that's not who we are, and we cannot allow ourselves to be that way.
Right. And we're not the type that says, okay, you know what? We got an issue down there at the border. Let's turn our head. Because here's the deal. When the domestic economy falls and, during the lockdown, it hurt a lot of small businesses. I'm on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Advisory Council, and I own a small business. Well, when domestic economy falls, crime increases. People get more desperate. You do things that are, that aren't normal, and people get put into positions of duress. And the border, absolutely. It's the same thing. I mean, if you can make money just going through one payload across, I literally, if you guys go to the video, you can see it's on my Facebook, Instagram, on all my social media outlets. I'm sitting in line with the migrants that are coming across the border, and they're not bad people. Don't get me wrong now. They weren't bad people, but they had their bags. They weren't coming here for a day. They were coming here to either work or they were put in a position. And sometimes people think it's Phoenix. I'm in the car with my buddies that are from RGV. They're like, yeah, the travelers or the coyotes would say, this is Houston. This is Phoenix. This is, I'm like, this is not Phoenix or Houston. He goes, yeah, but they don't know that. So
oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that. So
right.
all the false information that's being given to somebody who's been dropped off.
Yes. So they said they find that 99% of the time. Is a lot of times they don't know, and it's really close to the south tip of Texas. So, but they don't know, and so we have to deal with it in a way that allows us to use our technology, use our natural resources that's already there, use our barriers, empower our border patrol, empower our ICE, process amnesty claims on the other side, and at the same time, you know what? Use our strength and power as a superpower of the United States to come up with a workable solution that makes it equitable for Mexico to make sure that they're protected. I don't need cartels harassing people with amnesty cases that are pending. I don't need the cartels doing that. We need them to keep them safe, but also by no means are these people bad people that want to come to the United States, but they're being used as a cash crop for the cartels. So, we don't take kindly to that in Texas. And my advice is for anybody running for Congress that has the border in their district, make sure that you're advocating for the right stuff, because we need to make sure we put that at the forefront of everything.
Absolutely. Well, and Brad, so you're seeing firsthand when you have no rules, when you're able to go back and forth across the border without a passport, when you have people being lied to or who are coming over here, you see where we can set ourselves up so easily through the border in Texas, our backyard, for another 9/11.
And I've thought about that a lot because, so I used to play college football. I had two coaches. One was I played at Texas Tech for Mike Leach. The other was June Jones at SMU. One thing they were good at was, throwing the ball. We could throw the ball down the field all day long. The other defense wasn't stupid. They were in, a 3 coverage. They're in cover 3. Safeties were back deep. Well, the people who wish harm to the United States aren't stupid. If they see that we're vulnerable somewhere, or they know we're really good at, if you want to go through JFK, if you want to go through this airport, no, we're strong there. But at our border, it's not as strong as it is or it needs to be. We're going to go through there. And they have money. They have the resources. I mean, China, where fentanyl is the main ingredient product that is then, combusted and created in Mexico and then through the border. I mean, this is an ICO, an international crime organizations with international trade and commerce. They have their own routes and everything. Absolutely. We could set ourselves up for something, but I also think that as long as we elect the right people, we have the right oversight, and we have the right and support, our law enforcement and border patrol and give them the tools they need to do to be compassionate and to be able to enforce our safety, we're going to be fine. But if we don't act now, we're going to be in trouble.
We are. And again, it's one of those things you have to be proactive. 9/11 happened because of, you can't be reactive. 9/11 happened because of years of intelligence failure. I mean, we can go on and on about what happened and what led to 9/11. We can't leave ourselves sitting ducks for that again. And that's something we're about to introduce Fred, but that's something I want to talk about is, we're going to hear Fred's story and where he was on 9/11 and thank him tremendously for his service. But then I want to hear, do y'all think, here it is, it's the day before the 20th anniversary of 9/11 on September 10th of 2021, and think about it, I'll ask this question again in a little while, do we feel like we're sitting ducks all over again and maybe more so than before? So it's these are scary times we live in, And we're going to go back 20 years from now. And anybody who is a member of the crew already knows Fred. He's one of our daily commenters. He's been on the show before. But Fred Nort, who is a life coach, that's what you do for a living now because you're retired police department, among other things, yes, is with us today. And we're so happy that you're with us, Fred. You were a member of the Lake Success Police Department on Long Island. Fred and I have very different accents. So yes, you will be able to tell he is from up in that neck of the woods. But let's talk about your experience on 9/11. You were up there, you were in the thick of it. So welcome to the show. First of all, thank you for wearing the uniform and protecting us. On JP, Kathy, and the crew, we love our men and women in blue. We love our first responders. And never was it more clear to me on 9/11 when you see people running, everybody covered in ash and people jumping out of buildings, choosing to jump out of the World Trade Center versus being burned together by, fuel. And I just remember sitting there in awe of all of the first responders running into danger. And so thank you for being one of those that has protected us.
Well, thankfully, I wasn't working in Manhattan the day it happened, but...
Right.
And I'm a little upset about one thing right now.
Yeah.
There's no animals.
See, he is a member. They're in my bag, but I thought because today we were paying tribute to 9/11, I would not have my unicorns and Grogu and my Guns N' Roses koozie. So I was trying. I was trying to be respectful today.
All right, I'll
Fred.
give it to you for that.
Okay, thanks. But I do have them for a picture afterwards if you'd like. But let's talk about where you were, because you were up in that neck of the woods. You were an active police officer when 9/11 hit.
Yeah, I was working for Lake Success Police Department. Actually, that morning I was at the emergency vehicle operation course called EVOC course. It's where you learn to drive the police car. Actually, you don't learn how to drive it. Basically, it's a fun day if you get to go destroy some police cars, and if you hit something, it doesn't make a difference, no reports. And usually it's tires and stuff like that, but you kind of pass it, but we never even made it that far. I was sitting in the back of the room and watching it. We were actually on a break, and one of the instructors came in and comes out like, hey, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. I'm going, World Trade Center? I'm not thinking Twin Towers because I know it's World Trade Center, but to me the World Trade Center is a separate little building.
Right.
And it turns out I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it, watching everything burn. I'm like, what the heck's going on? And next thing you know, within a few minutes, we saw the second plane hit. And that's when we said, something's wrong here. The first one you figure maybe, okay, it's some pilot that miscalculated or some stupid thing like that, or electrical problems. When the second one hit, you see it's a big plane, instead of being a little one, you're like, okay, this is not right. So where my evac was actually Nassau County Police Jail. So as soon as the second plane hit, I can't remember, the second plane hit was the first collapse. But when the second plane hit, we scrambled out of it. We had to get out of it because the jail was getting locked down because they knew we were under attack. And we didn't want to get stuck inside the jail because otherwise, even though we're a separate area, we would have locked down. The sheriff's department wouldn't let us out. It wouldn't matter if we were police or not. They wouldn't let anybody out who was inside.
Oh, even if you're a police officer, if you're in at a certain time, that's it.
Out. Yeah, so and plus we're all, at that time, we're all in civilian clothes, so we wouldn't look like,
okay, gotcha.
So we all bolted out, and I'm driving back to headquarters, which is probably about 20 miles away, and I got to a point of, I remember, just thinking Marcus Avenue and Jericho Turnpike, and I heard on the radio the first tower collapsed. And I'm like, what the heck? And then I drove all the way to work. By the time I got to work, the second tower went to collapse, and I got back to work around 10 a.m., I think it was, a little before 10. And I rushed in. It was my normal tour of duty. I was just going to evac for the morning anyway. And I went and changed, got dressed, and then next thing we were just doing traffic control all day long because where Lake Success at was, if you look at a map of Long Island, you'll see Interstate 495, which I think is pretty funny because an interstate is supposed to connect states. It doesn't connect states. It connects the east end of Long Island and Manhattan. So it's really not it's called an interstate, but doesn't really it doesn't do its job. So I always tried to figure that one out when I was growing up, and we bordered at Queens, and what happened was New York City shut the border down at Queens. They weren't allowing anybody in, and we shut the expressway down so nobody get on the expressway because on Long Island, the only major thoroughfare to get any big trucks anywhere in Long Island is Long Island Expressway. So we couldn't take a chance that it hit one of the bridges, and we couldn't get the trucks in or get the extra firefighters in and stuff like that. We're going to work, trying to get in there. And so they shut down. What they were doing was they were shutting down like I said, the next road up, which I covered Lakeville Road, which is the first major north-south roadway east of Nassau Queens border. The one just west, it was Little Neck Parkway. When the cars were going into Little Neck Parkway, they're making them make a right on Little Neck Parkway to head north down to Northern Boulevard. They're making them make a right to Northern Boulevard to get out of the city. They weren't allowing them to go west. We had an intersection Northern Boulevard and Lakeville Road, which we couldn't cover. We had Nassau County cover it. And they were actually making the cars make a right turn. They allowed them to make a right turn to come back south to go to the LA, thinking they'd get on the LA. And we shut that. We had 2 underpasses that we shut down so nobody could go under the bridges. And I literally watched the same car pass every hour. But meanwhile, I could look over my left shoulder, and I could see the smoking towers from there. Because it's only about, probably as a crow flies, maybe 15, no, it's not more than 20 miles. I think it's maybe 15 miles away, 20 miles away where the buildings were.
So you literally could see the billowing smoke, the ash, everything going on. I mean, what goes through, obviously, the police officer in you thinks one way, you think about protecting and serving. Just as an American, what was that like knowing we have been attacked?
It's a weird feeling. It's hard to explain what it was. It was definitely a feeling going, it was like, holy crap, we're under attack. And, and when it comes to the United States on the ground, the United States, technically the police are the first line of defense.
Right.
So we didn't know what's going on. So we're all ready to go in case something stupid happens. We know we don't know what's going on. They said, we're on Long Island. I work for 2 Square Mile Village, but we still were, like I said, on the Nassau Queens border there. So we still had everything that's going to happen in Manhattan. And as it proved, the first 2 planes hit in Manhattan. The first 2 planes hit in Manhattan because Manhattan's a beast of its own.
Right.
There's nothing I can compare. I joke around saying like Long Island, the Brooklyn, Queens area is kind of like Plano, Dallas.
Right.
When you get to Nassau County, it's kind of like the Frisco end of Plano, the side of Plano. And then when you get out to the east end of Long Island, you got like the 5 eastern towns totally different, like kind of like Little Elm and Salina. I grew up where I went 7 miles east of my house, and a John Deere tractor blocking farms.
Right.
So that's the logistics of all of Long Island. But everything's going to happen on the west end of Long Island because that's where all the major people are.
Well, and hence the reason that was the target. That's one of the epicenters of. Everything that we stand for. Capitalism, opportunity, freedom, growth, liberty, lived right there. Yeah. They knew that.
Yeah, they did.
They knew that.
And they picked the 2 biggest things in New York City. They actually did 2 biggest things in New York City to hit.
Yeah.
And God only knows how many other planes were out there to do the same thing. There was 4 total planes to hit, I think.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, 4.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm trying to think whether there's a 5th one that they knew about that they were able to stop. I forgot about that part. But luckily, there are probably a bunch of other planes that are ready to go, too, because they had a whole bunch of pilots done.
Well, because at that point, Dallas, Houston, L.A., big cities everywhere, all of a sudden it was, mass exodus from those places. Everybody kind of hunkered down at home because if you were near a Dallas, a Houston, a Los Angeles, a Boston, any major city that's a major metropolis, we didn't know, are we next? Yeah. We just didn't know.
But, it's crazy. And then what got me crazy is we were sitting there, and next thing we know, we're right by Lakeville Road and the North Service Road, which in Lake Success, the North Service Road kind of ran westbound only, but there's one part west of Lakeville Road that could run eastbound. There's a white van sitting there. And of course, we're like, what's going on? Run the plate. And it comes back to an Enterprise rental car van. I'm like, all right, here we go. Holy crap.
Yeah.
They know a bridge to take out because they take that one bridge out. Even though a few others in Queens, but we're all figuring
it's a big problem.
As us as cops, we're figuring we're a small village. They're thinking these guys are going to try to hit a small village that think that we don't know what's going on.
Right.
And we see the van there, so now we have to shut down everything. We literally locked down you locked down the westbound service road. There were hundreds of thousands of cars. Lake Success, we had about 250,000 to 500,000 cars a day go through our village. It's a 2 square mile village every day because of the expressway. So we had all that jam packed in. And if you don't forget, this happened on rush hour. Happened a little before rush hour, but rush hour kind of runs almost 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning in Lake Success because there's still people trying to get in the city for later on. And so we had to lock down everything, and then we had to wait. We waited like we had to wait 20 minutes to a half hour for the bomb squad to get there, just to check out the truck. And it ends up being just some
random
person. I'll leave it at that. Just dropped the vehicle there and said, it's not running. I'll leave it here.
Yeah.
On that day, and just walked away from it.
Instead of
walking up and telling the police officers that are directing traffic right there, hey, the car's broken down.
Right.
So we hit that. That was another thing throwing the whole works. I'm like, all right, here we go. They're gonna blow the bridge up. you know, and it was just crazy because the traffic alone was weird. Every hour, when I was doing both sides, I did 12-hour traffic control. I got in 10 o'clock in the morning. I left 10 o'clock at night. Finally, we're done with it. I finally traffic subsided. It was at 10 o'clock at night because it was just so much traffic and so many cars. I mean, Long Island is basically almost the same square mileage as Denton County.
Oh, wow.
And Brooklyn and Queens, for all you Brooklyn Queens people, it is on Long Island. You may not like to say it, but you are on Long Island. Between Brooklyn, Queens, and Nassau, Suffolk County, is about 7 million people, just residents.
Wow.
So think about putting 7 million people in Denton County.
No.
That's the traffic
that's
control. I mean,
insane.
everybody says you have traffic down here. I'm like, no.
No, y'all don't have traffic.
North end of my village is 1.1 miles. Northern Boulevard, Lakeville Road, let's talk about the north end of my village, is 1.1 miles of the expressway. During rush hour traffic in the afternoon, at 4:30 in the afternoon, 5 o'clock, I'm sitting in. I wasn't going no call in the police car. I reset the trip meter. It was 1.1 miles. Took me 13 minutes. Wow. So whenever you say you have traffic here, you have
no,
you have a lot of traffic. I mean,
it's all
my wife
good.
can make a 25-mile ride in 35 minutes going to work. But meanwhile, in New York, in the rush hour traffic, a 25-mile ride takes you about 45 minimum to an hour and 20. And on Long Island, it's funny because we don't say time on Long Island when it comes to how far you are. Somebody asks, hey, how long is that's 3 miles. How long? What time frame?
Yeah.
It's 3
yeah,
miles.
3
Good luck.
miles.
You don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Well, it's
So
5,
we'll-
yeah.
we'll
If you
see,
ever
we'll
ask
see.
anybody downstate, they always say miles. Upstate New York is like Texas. They'll say, oh, it's 20 minutes down the road. It's only 20 minutes. We don't say time on Long Island. You just can't. You know. 'cause-
Well, on behalf of all the 6th graders when I was a millennial and I'm a millennial now, thank you for your service on
Thank
that
you. I
day.
appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I was a kid in Frankfurt Middle School, and you were doing your job to help keep all of us safe as best as you could. So thank you for that. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
It's funny
yeah.
because I can relate to what he was talking about a little bit in the sense of I was in high school. I was in, maybe it was 8th and 9th grade when Challenger hit.
Oh.
And we were watching on TV when the first
Yes.
Challenger blew up. So it's kind of, I can relate the situation with our Challenger blowing up was kind of like the shock of the Twin Towers getting hit in a way for kids.
Right.
You know, because they don't know what's
When you're
going
young,
on.
when you're
watch
young
it,
and
like,
you're trying to figure out,
you're like, holy God, what
adults,
just happened?
all the adults
You know,
are
I mean,
panicking.
different Challenger wasn't an attack, but at the
Right.
same time, it's kind of like the same reality.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that frustrates me the most right now is
Yeah.
that I think that our country and our politics has become so visceral to forget about what it is to be an American, what it is to also understand that we're the United States of America, and I'm not going to hold the sins of the past, the failures of the past, to dictate where we need to be in the future. You know, I was in 6th grade. He was helping protect my life
Yeah.
and lives in
Yep.
New York.
Yep.
And we're both Americans, and we like it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and we've got to get back to that. But at the same time, I do think there are battles ahead. Like I told you, I'm worried about. We have cyber. We have the border issues. We also have. I mean, you said a rental van.
Yeah.
The
I was
list.
more
well, the
upset the
list-
cyber. They cut the beef.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved to Texas for brisket, right?
Yeah. Right.
Come on.
Don't worry, we got it
Good
back.
barbecue
We got it back.
here.
Yeah.
We
Well,
got it back.
but
know.
that's the thing, we are,
But-
and Lathan, then I want to go to you and find out where you were, and I'm going to talk about my thoughts on 9/11. It's we are in such trying times. I mean, I don't think there's any one of us here that disagree. And if you're a member of the crew and you're on one of our sites right now, if you're watching the show or if you're watching this later, and please share this because we want to make sure that we pay tribute to folks. But it's one of those things where we are in trying times. We've got racial unrest. We've got sexism, ageism. You've got religious battles. Right. You've got battles over the pandemic. You've got people literally just living on the edge.
Right.
You've got a mental health crisis that we haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg. We've got alcoholism, drug use, abuse, child abuse, spousal abuse, pet abuse. You've got people.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah. Well, we've got to give a shout out for our puppies and our kitties.
All
Our
that,
puppies get it.
all that wrapped up right now,
Into one.
and now also your 20th anniversary of 9/11.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
every year, 9/11 was kind of like
It's when we all
see,
came
the
together.
thing about it was what happened with this. I traveled after 9/11 quite a bit to different parts of the country,
Right.
and unfortunately, it becomes an afterthought for a lot of people.
Yep.
Because it didn't affect them. Like California, it didn't affect California.
But
it
it
did. But in the sense that nothing hit there. And
Unless,
and I don't mean
unless
negative
you
towards
had
California,
no.
but I'm talking about,
I think it's one of those things that it really hit you if. Obviously, if you have somebody who was there, I've got friends who were visiting
Yes.
D.C. and
Yeah.
saw the Pentagon get hit. I have friends who would have been at work in the World
Yeah.
Trade Center, but they had a sick kid, or they had a flat tire, or
Yeah.
you just so I
Well,
think
what I
that
meant-
impacts you even more. But as we get further away from it, how do we make sure that people don't forget what happened to us?
Well, what I meant by it didn't affect them as much as that, and they
It's
got
like your
is that
backyard,
in New
yeah.
York, in our backyard, this is our backyard, and being like I said, we boarded the NYPD, and we had special computers put in our headquarters that chimed every day with something like a terroristic threat or something like that. So and you lived it every day, and being that close to New York City, you kind of the heightened security is a lot more in New York City than anywhere else.
Right.
It became a big time New York City right after that, and it always had. It was.
It has remained
There was a lot of
that
heightened
way.
security before that, but a big time, and pretty much remained that way. Where you traveled to other parts of the country,
Right.
and the security wasn't there as
Yeah.
much. I mean, not
Kind of
that
like
it
our
wasn't-
border right now.
Yeah, it wasn't not negative. The security was there, but it wasn't as stacked up as it was
Right.
in New York City. You didn't have the extra 10 layers to go through
Right.
to get the same thing done. You still had security to get through, but not.
Right.
So that's what I mean. So it was kind of weird. And then so every year on 9/11, we'll think, okay, they're gonna do another one, and then after a while, it became an afterthought. But then every 5-year, 10-year, 15-year anniversary, that's when people in New York kind of like, okay, they're gonna hit now. It's the anniversary and stuff like that. And
Right.
actually, a lot of police officers saying they're probably not gonna hit. Like, I don't personally think anything's gonna happen tomorrow, because what happens is they know we're looking for it now.
Oh,
So these guys, they're not, like he said before, they're not stupid.
yeah.
They're
right.
smart people. They know they're looking for it. So everybody, I mean, as a country as a whole, people are scared something's going to happen. But a lot of law enforcement, listen, we are stepping up security and stuff like that. I mean,
Obviously.
up there, but it's not like it's a lot of times we say, you know what, they aren't crazy enough to do it again on the 20th anniversary.
But then again,
They are, but they are. But if anything,
are
if anything,
they?
it's going to be a solo, singular terrorist person. It's not going to be a big terror. They're not going to take the planes over. I don't think that's what I personally think. I mean, they could do it. Let's say, it can happen, but.
And again,
They're gonna hit another day of
and so,
another
well,
monumental day besides this one, because they know
right.
they
Well,
took care of this.
now
one.
my concern is, okay, does some kind of something happen in Afghanistan as a statement kind of a thing? And then I want to go over to Lathan. So, you and I are close to the same age. Where were you when 9/11 happened?
Okay.
What were you doing? What were your thoughts?
I was in Tunica County, Mississippi.
Okay.
Went to law school at Ole Miss. So I was out of law school, just starting. I was actually, I think, in like a small claims court, and was standing there, and a couple of sheriff's deputies. I heard one of them mention to the other, "Hey, an airplane hit the World Trade Center," and I remember kind of looking at him. I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I
Exact
just
same
heard
reaction I
about it."
had.
I was like,
yeah.
My
Well,
first
'cause you
thought
think
was
maybe it's an accident.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought, well,
Oh, horrible.
a building that big should be pretty easy to miss.
Right.
I mean, So I thought, was there a mechanical issue with the plane? Did the pilot, pass out? Could they not control what was going on?
Especially since
right?
JFK and LaGuardia are not that far away from either one of them.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
JFK is a lot closer
Right.
to the towers were than LaGuardia was. So
Right.
you got big planes flying that general
All
area
the
all the
time.
time.
So that was my first thought, was how does that happen? So I finished what I had to do, and I went back over to the office and turned the TV on. And that's, when the second one hit, you're like, okay, so this was not an accident at all.
Right.
And I just remember just having this sick feeling in the pit of my stomach, and just being angrier than I could ever remember. And I talked to my grandfather that night, and I just told him, I think I now have an idea of what you felt like on December 7th, 1941.
Pearl
Because
Harbor.
exactly,
That was
because
kind of our Pearl Harbor. Then.
Pearl Harbor,
Yeah.
yeah.
because he lost
That was American soil.
he lost a cousin at Pearl Harbor, and went and volunteered. Actually made his aunt pretend to be his mother, because he wasn't 18 yet. His
To
mother
sign
wouldn't
off.
sign it. He got his aunt to pretend to be his mother to sign it, so
sign
that
it.
he could get in.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, jeez.
You hear a lot. You hear a lot of
Heard a
stories
lot
like
about
that
that,
back then, because
Right.
people were ready to step up.
Well, and I driving home, because I was living in Oxford, bit of a drive between Tunica and Oxford, and I'd basically made the decision by the time I got back to Oxford, Mississippi, and I stopped by the recruiting office there before I got to my house. I don't know if I ever told my wife that, so she may be learning something today.
Hello, Kim. Good morning.
I did tell her, because they announced, the president's going to address the nation.
Right.
And I did tell her, and my parents. It was like, because I really thought this is the beginning of World War III. Like, this is going to be
Yes.
a
Right.
global.
Yes.
It is on, right? And I and I told her if he's going to address the nation, if he comes on and does what I think he might do, and announces this is going to be the biggest, I need every able-bodied man. I'm telling you, I'm going.
Yeah.
Now he didn't do that. The recruiter that I had talked to that day is like, just
keep your powder dry.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
hold on. If we need you, you'll know if we need you. And he's like, we don't need lawyers. But I told him, I am a lawyer, but I know how to pull a trigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my initial, and then most of that day so once the plane hit the Pentagon, my roommate from college, who's godfather of my kids, he was in D.C. because he was going to work for the State Department, and he had already completed basically all the stuff you have to go through, and he had signed the little contract that says, I will go anywhere in the world you want to send me.
Right.
Yeah.
And his first day to report at the State Department, like show up for work,
Was
9/11/2001. So he gets a call saying, don't come to the office, stay home, and he's looking out his window. I mean, there are literally tanks in the streets.
Yeah.
And he has just signed this paper that says, I'll go anywhere in the world you want to send me.
Wait.
Where am I going now?
Yeah.
So I was frantically trying to get a call into him
Yep.
because I didn't know where he was. And I couldn't. You could not. There were so many calls trying to go in and out of
Lines were
D.C. It was
jammed
just,
up.
you
Well,
couldn't
and
get a
20
call
years
in.
ago,
Yeah,
we
just
weren't
gridlocked the
technology-wise
phones.
where we were. So that many people, it jammed up all the systems, and people couldn't get a hold of
I
their
had to
loved
call
ones.
his parents out in West Texas, and I just told him, I was like, have you heard from, and finally he was
Finally,
able to get a
okay.
call out to him and say, yeah, I'm okay. But I remember thinking you hit the towers, that's an act of terrorism. You hit the Pentagon, that's an act of war.
Yes.
And
yes.
and back then we didn't really think of the two
As
separately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, or we did,
Yeah.
but not the way we think of it all today as, quote, the war on terrorism.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, that may be an individual terrorist act, but whoever is behind that plane hitting the Pentagon, that is an act of war.
Absolutely.
And that means us versus you and anybody else who had anything to do with it. And that's where I sort of had this mentality of like, here we go.
Right.
Yeah.
We are finally going to get
Yeah.
serious about taking care of some things
And I do believe
in
they
that
found
region of the
out-
world.
I do believe they found out that a plane was going to hit. That was down in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania,
was
yeah.
going for the White House.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And
That's
it got,
that's. I
and,
think they figured that one out.
and I tell you,
eventually.
and at the end of the show, we're going to take a moment of silence for everybody we lost and those who are still fighting, and battling issues from 9/11, and remember those brave passengers. By that point, they had heard
Yep.
what was going on, and just normal, everyday citizens became heroes that day in
Can I say
Pennsylvania.
one thing about this too?
yeah.
Is that being in 6th grade at the time to now, and knowing and seeing just how much our technology has advanced leaps and bounds. Texas is all I know. Dallas, Texas, and Collin County. My parents came from another country. They came from Iran here before
Right.
the fall of the Shah.
Right.
My mother and father were both in tears at 9/11. I mean, I never saw my father cry.
But you
Because
did that day.
That day I did.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
he was so upset about it. And again, as a kid, when your dad cries, it's kind of a different thing when you're a son. Seeing your dad, teary up. Then,
Yeah.
and then I remember my English teacher was crying, and so many adults are crying. And I might have a little different opinion. I feel like if you touch any of our soil, it's an act of war. If you touch a sand, it doesn't matter what it is. That's an act of war, and we show our strength. But when I saw my dad and my mom cry, who are proud Americans, and being a first generation, I almost feel like it's a fiduciary. I want to let listeners know that we will have not only the moral attributes of what makes us the global superpower, again, at a higher standard, but we're going to have great people who are going to defend our country from the White House to Congress to everything, and we're going to get more North Texas values, and we don't take kindly to any
No.
type of stupidity or terrorist or anybody.
And that's why,
We're not gonna
Brad,
put up with
Brad
it.
I like having your perspective because you are younger and you're still hopeful. I'll never forget, I was working from home, and I think I was working for Kevin Brandon at the time, dear friend of mine in Lathan's, and a great patriot. And I remember one of my young Republican friends from Austin. She said, "Are you watching TV?" And I said, "No, I'm up working in the office." And she said, "You need to turn on the news." And this was right before the second tower was hit. And I thought, again, like most people thought, oh, what a horrific! Oh my gosh, what a horrific accident! Just gosh, right there, big plane, like you said, horrific accident. But then when the second tower was hit, I remember my mom calling me in tears, and she said, "It's World War III," and she was bawling, and then calls just kept coming in, and I'm looking, I've got my daughter, my son hadn't been born yet, my daughter who is, just a few weeks away from turning 2, and I'm thinking, is this it? Is this it? And you couldn't, those of us who were looking at young children thinking, this is all we get, is this all you get? It was jarring, and so we moved past this. I'm concerned. I'm glad to hear from somebody who knows law enforcement much better than I do that, and most of my law enforcement, friends with the sheriff's department and the different police departments around town, around the county and Texas, they're like, Kathy, and they're saying like, we are so ready, but it's still. Anybody who will speak ill of our country tomorrow, including people who are Americans. If you're an American and you don't like it here, get out. Get out. We will
there are
do a
people
fundraiser.
Who will be here.
We will do a fundraiser. We'll buy you the luggage. We'll get you out. But I tell you what, tomorrow is one of those days. If you can't say anything nice about your country, don't say anything at all, and just go quiet for the day. Go play your video games. Go smoke your pot. Float your boat. Whatever floats your boat. Do a TikTok video about some rap song. Whatever you're going to do. Tomorrow is not the day to speak ill of 9/11, and we're almost to the end of our hour. And so I want to challenge members of the crew and people who are watching this. If you've got children who are younger, who weren't born yet, or who were very young when this happened, do something to keep 9/11 as something in the forefront. And this is something that I've done for years and years and years with my kids. And we light a red, white, and blue candle, and we've done this even since my daughter's moved out on her own. She'll FaceTime if she's not with us, and we light a red candle, a white candle, and a blue candle. We say a prayer for those who were lost during 9/11, a prayer for those who are still suffering with illness, disease, grief, mental health issues, whatever the case may be, financial issues, spiritual issues, whatever we pray for them, and then we play Lee Greenwood's "God Bless the USA," and it chokes me up to think about it every time we do this. The kids are like, and engage tears with mom because they know I'm going to get emotional. But I feel like it's one of those things that it's our duty to make sure that generations to come don't forget what happened to innocent Americans on American soil.
We won't forget.
Well,
thank you.
I want to say it's funny. Not funny. Just think about. I take a step back later saying about the planes.
Yeah.
It was the year. It was where I worked in Lake Success. The flight pattern for JFK was right over top of my area. So there were no planes flying over area for days. I'm like, it was just really eerie not to see big 747 flying around. And it was even more eerie the day I went to Ground Zero, which was 3 days later. I was at Ground Zero for one day. I went every 8 hours, and it was just eerie to see fighter pilots. They were F-14s, F-15s flying over Manhattan the whole entire time. We saw them, and just the whole thing about Ground Zero was weird because it was eerie because
you're looking at another world.
Well, where I was actually at the World Trade Center spot where they set up the command post for the FDNY firefighters, and I was helping do the bucket brigade to dig them out, and we actually were able to dig them out. I mean, I was on the end of the bucket brigade. We would do hand buckets all day long for we were there for 8 hours doing that. Took a couple breaks, but it's just eerie to see a 6-story piece of facade, and looked up and said that was 110 stories tall one time.
Wow!
And the worst part was not knowing how many bodies there were, because they still didn't know. We had no clue how many. We were sitting there going. I even said to my lieutenants with me, I said, "There could be 20,000 people right here.
And
there could be 20,000 people buried right here. We don't know it. We will never know. We won't know until weeks upon years later." And thankfully, it was only. Thankfully, it's crazy. There's only 3,000 total, something a little over 3,000. But
still, those are 3,000 people that should never have died.
Because the Twin Towers had its own zip code. just for
Oh,
the
I
Twin
did
Towers.
not know
Yeah.
that until today.
It had its own zip code just for the Twin Towers. That's
Yeah.
how big they were, and how many people, how many things in there. Any given time is 50 to 100. I think for 50 to 100,000 people in there at any given time, even more than that. I forgot
So,
the
so
number,
it's,
but
it is
yeah.
miraculous that we didn't lose.
It's like its own city.
We didn't lose more, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what people do say. That it is like its own city. Well, Brad and Fred and Lathan, I cannot thank y'all enough. Again, Fred, God bless you. Thank you for your service. You know, we just love you. Brad and Lathan, always love having you guys on the show, and we really, really appreciate y'all coming on today. We're going to show a dear friend of ours, Susan Fisher, when she found out that that Brad, she's actually who introduced Brad and I, and Susan's a longtime friend of the show, used to work for Congressman Sam Johnson. When she found out that Brad was going to be on the show today, she gave him a picture that she has from 9/11 that hangs in her home, that we're going to show that image here at the end, and just take a moment of silence as we close out JP, Kathy, and the crew. Be safe this weekend, be vigilant, take care of each other, love your country, and just be so grateful that we're citizens of the most amazing country on God's green earth, and nobody can ever tell me different. So thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here with me today and being part of JP, Kathy, and the crew. We love you guys, and we're going to close out the show with this image of to remember those who were lost in 9/11 and those who are still suffering. So thank you so much, and
Have a great weekend,
God
all y'all.
bless you.
Yeah, thank you.